Texas Supreme Court has ruled that a lower court made a mistake when it allowed a pregnant woman whose fetus was diagnosed with a fatal condition to get an abortion, per The Hill. The state Supreme Court said that Travis County District Judge Maya Guerra Gamble's decision to issue a temporary restraining order last week to allow Ms. Cox to have the abortion was a mistake. Gamble's decision on Cox's medical emergency was put on hold by the Texas State Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who asked the state Supreme Court to intervene in the matter. The Supreme Court temporarily blocked the lower court's ruling on Friday. Cox's fetus was diagnosed with trisomy 18, a chromosomal anomaly that leads to miscarriage, stillbirth, or the death of the infant within hours, days, or weeks after birth, and can cause fertility issues with women in the future.
Pro-abortion political figures and advocacy groups were quick to criticize Paxton and the Texas Supreme Court for their actions against Cox. Former presidential and Senate hopeful Beto O'Rourke posted a video on X of Texas Supreme Court Justice John Devine pushing his pro-life bona fides, which had gotten him arrested. Let's take a look.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want to submit to you that before I ever got in politics, my convictions were forged in the crucibles of the pro-life movement. I ran into a bunch of crazy Catholics, and they talked me into rescuing at abortion clinics. And I rescued in Austin and Corpus Christi and was arrested 37 times. Now, isn't it an irony that today I stand before you as one who could very well win the Texas Supreme Court?
This story in Texas plays against a backdrop of increasing reticence amongst GOP candidates to push for hard abortion bans. NBC News reports Republican candidates in states that will determine control of the U.S. Senate next year have quietly shifted their stances on abortion rights in an attempt to combat Democrat success running on this issue. In key 2024 battleground states, some GOP Senate hopefuls have subtly begun to place more emphasis on situations in which abortion should be legal, while others have made clear they oppose a federal ban on the procedure.
So this case has been really taking the country by storm, particularly because it is teeing up a lot of the issues that pro-life folks are concerned about when they see these more extreme abortion laws spreading across the country.
Pro-choice folks, you mean?
Sorry?
Did you say pro-life folks?
I don't know. People who support the right to choose.
Right.
So Ms. Cox, the woman in question here, is the mother of 2 children. She says she wants a big family. This was a wanted pregnancy. She went to the emergency room and to the doctor a number of times because of cramping and other symptoms that indicated there might be something wrong with the pregnancy. At some point in consultation with her doctor, the doctor advised, did the chromosomal test, found out that the fetus had trisomy 18, which in all but very, very rare cases results in the baby dying shortly after death. In a very, very, very small percentage of cases, I think only 10% of cases live beyond the first year. And in very anomalous cases, I think they can live to being a teenager with a whole host of health problems. So given that this woman wanted a large family and that there can be risks to carrying the child to term, to your ability to get pregnant in the future, the doctor recommended that she abort this baby. The lower court agreed that she should have permission to do so, even though she was at 20 weeks. And the Bill Paxton pursued this case and successfully prohibited her from being able to get an abortion. Now, she has since left the state to get medical care, but this is raising some additional questions about whether or not we're going to see laws that Republicans have been flirting with that would also criminalize travel to other states or restrict people's ability to do even that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much in the way of disagreement with you here on this. Even most pro-life people talk about medical exception, health of the mother exception. This isn't even, I mean, this is a component of that, but it's really, it seems like a fairly helpless case, one that should not be prohibited. Again, most pro-life people, I don't think necessarily would want this prohibited at all. In fact, this is exactly the kind of exception they think should be in the laws they support. So why the Texas Attorney General would be interfering here to cause more attention to the exact scenario that Democrats will bring more people into the fold by publicizing and saying, this is what Republicans will do if they have their way, if they get to write our abortion laws, this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of a policy they want to prevent, situation they want to prevent, it doesn't sound like a good idea at all. So I have nothing else to say. It's not a good idea.
So part of the reason this happened is there's this conflict, that the legal conflict here is whether or not the standard should be a good faith standard, a determination of a doctor that the abortion is medically necessary, versus a kind of higher standard that Paxton and the state are arguing for, which is a doctor's reasonable medical judgment standard. Now, it seems to me that under either, this woman should have been allowed to have the abortion. But what the state of Texas, where, to be clear, I don't know if we said this, there's an abortion ban in Texas. You are not allowed to have abortion at any point in Texas. The good faith without these exceptions for not litigating. No, there's an abortion ban
cutoff
in Texas.
Okay, I don't know what the state of the law is.
Texas is the largest state in which there's an abortion ban, is my understanding.
Okay.
So they're saying that if you allow for a good faith determination, then that opens the floodgates. The doctors can say that in my good faith medical judgment, this abortion should be allowed. And on and on and on. So they want it to be a higher standard. And it's worth noting that if a doctor performs an illegal abortion in Texas, they can face up to 99 years in prison and fines of at least $100,000. That's all reporting from the at least $100,000. Yeah, that's reporting from the New York Times. So these are the stakes for not just women in Texas, but also doctors in Texas who might come afoul of these court determinations as to whether or not their judgment was reasonable and therefore within the law.
I just looked up. It's a 6-week ban.
It's a 6-week ban?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously we're in a situation here where it's 20 weeks, not because, again, someone was negligent and waiting too long, but because they simply did not know that their pregnancy wasn't going to be viable. I mean, in the New York Times story, there's a picture of the woman taking a happy pregnancy pic, the kind you post on social media when you're celebrating a wanted pregnancy. And here you have a literal medical condition that's being precluded from the state. When we're talking about state actors getting between a woman and her doctor in these kind of intimate medical decisions and substituting their judgment for the judgment of medical practitioners, this is exactly that kind of case.
Right. I mean, the pro-life view is that, and there's an argument over at one point, and people feel differently about this, but that at some point, some pro-life people believe it's from like conception and on. Some people think it's from heartbeat and on. At some point, there is what you are carrying, the fetus you're carrying, is essentially indistinguishable from a baby. In some cases, they want the standard to be viability outside. There's all these different reasons people come up with for why this should be the cutoff. It should be 6 weeks, or it should be 10 weeks, or it should be 12 weeks, or it should be 20 weeks. There shouldn't be one at all. But this, right, it doesn't really apply in this case if it is the case that this was a genome defect this is not going to be a healthy, viable entity at all. I don't think most people want the government to really get involved.
Right, but as we've seen in many policy areas in the United States of America, what most people want has absolutely no bearing on what Congress is willing to do. And obviously, certain conservatives have really made their bread and butter over being perceived as really zealous on this issue. We saw the clip from Bill Paxton bragging about how he made his bones pursuing exactly these kinds of I don't know, I would characterize them as rights, but interfering with these kinds of rights. And so there is this tension within the Republican Party, obviously, where there's an acknowledgement that this is a political non-starter. But that doesn't do a lot when you have states like Texas with very strict abortion laws that even most people in Texas, I would suspect, aren't supportive of. But if a particular politician in a particular district can get political traction off of it, you can still see it having an effect going into
Republicans can save themselves from the situation by saying that, well, Texas can do what Texas wants. Texas is a red state, and if voters don't like what the policy is, they can reject the political figures who did it. And California is its own state, and Florida is its own state, and Michigan's its own state, and there should not be a national abortion policy, which was the Republican position, even among very pro-life political figures, was that we let the states decide. Do not have one policy at the national level. And then some people, like Lindsey Graham, for some reason, opened that can of worms, and now they have to keep taking stances on it, and it wasn't politically savvy to do that whatsoever.
Yeah, and I do want to. I'm sorry that we're having this debate live. I'm reading that there was a trigger law that went into effect in Texas on August 25th of 2022, which bans all abortions bans abortion in all cases except to save the life of a mother. That seems to be what we're up against here. It was really quite strict, a true abortion ban. But to your point about traveling and making it a state-by-state issue, pro-choice advocates have always pointed out that while people of means are able to travel to other states more easily, it's basically a tax on lower-income women to basically require them to do interstate travel in order to get basic medical care. Is that the country we want to live in? I don't know. This is kind of what's at stake in the upcoming elections and why Joe Biden, frankly, may be able to eke out a win, because this really is perceived as such a fundamental right to so many people. All right, stick around. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.